Okay, so for today's experiment, we will be reacting bleach with food dye in order to observe how reaction rates can vary, otherwise known as kinetics. There are 6 different ways in which a reaction rate can vary, and 2 of them we're going to observe today. Number 1 is if the reactants are different. In different reactions, if they have different reactants, you can see a varying reaction rate. Number 2 is the concentration. If you have 2 of the exact same reactants in different concentrations, the rate at which they will react will vary. Number 3 is surface area. Number 4 is temperature and pressure. Number 5 is the introduction of a catalyst. And number 6 is the state that the substance is in. Today we will be observing number 1 and number 2. Okay, so I have 3 beakers, to each of which I have added distilled water and a magnetic stir bar in order to improve the reaction with the bleach and food dye. To the first 2 beakers, I will be adding blue food dye with a varying concentration in order to observe how the bleach reacts with it differently. Then to the third beaker, I will add green food dye, and we can observe how it reacts differently between the first 2. Okay, so to this first beaker, I will be adding 1 drop of blue food dye, and to the second beaker, I will be adding many drops of blue food dye in order to indicate a higher concentration of food dye. I will then take bleach and add it to the first and second beakers, and we will observe how the reactions vary. Take a second and tell me how you think the 2 will vary and what your predictions are. Okay, so what's happening here is since the concentration in the middle beaker is higher than the beaker on the right, the reaction is actually taking place much quicker in the middle beaker because the reactants are colliding a lot quicker than on the right. Since this might not seem as clear in this demo, what I'm going to show next is the reaction of green food dye with bleach. This is a much quicker reaction, and as I begin to add the bleach to the green food dye, I want you to tell me what you think will happen. Okay, so hopefully what you'll begin to notice as the bleach begins to react with the green food dye is that the yellow component of the food dye is actually reacting faster than the blue component. What this shows is that yellow food dye reacts faster with bleach than blue food dye. So in this instance, the blue food dye persists while the yellow food dye disappears. So in conclusion, what I hope you guys learned from this video is that the varying concentrations of reactants varies the rate at which reactants react. In this case, because there was a higher concentration of blue food dye in the middle beaker, you actually saw it react much quicker than you saw in the first beaker where there was less blue food dye. You also saw in the third beaker that if the reactants are different, as in with yellow and blue food dye, the reaction rates vary. After 1 hour, what we observe is that the blue food dyes have reacted with the bleach completely, similarly to how the yellow food dye reacted, at a much slower rate.